Welcome to the Recovering Perfectionist Podcast, where I empower you to develop sustainable habits, challenge society, and take messy action. I'm Christine, life balance coach and world champion ballroom dancer, and I believe that everyone has the power to create their very own life by design. The Recovering Perfectionist Podcast was created with a mission to encourage a life of abundance by finding peace and acceptance in our own imperfections and developing healthy self-love through sustainable habits and manifestation. It's time to align with the universe for the full human experience and redefine what it really means to be successful.
It's too good, the secret is out and wow.
Welcome back to the Recovering Perfectionist Podcast. I am so excited for our guest today. I am here with Christina Pfeffer, and she calls herself the ballroom coach. And you guys know, if you've listened to my podcast over and over again, this is so exciting for me. We just connected on social media. I come from the world of ballroom dancing. I am trying to, do a lot of things in that world with mental health and life balance, and we're going to get deep into that today. But Christina is doing this. This is so exciting, and I cannot wait to have you guys talk to her. Welcome, Christina.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here.
This is so great. This is so great. Also, you're coming in from Denmark, is where you're calling from today. Very, very
cool. I live in Denmark, but to be honest, I work only online, so it doesn't really matter where I am. But yeah, I live in Denmark at the moment. I lived in London for 12 years, though, so it's
love that.
It feels a little bit like a Londoner sometimes as well.
Yeah, location independence, man. That's what it's all about in this this new chapter of the world. It's amazing. I feel the same way. I can literally work from Wi-Fi.
Exactly, and that's the amazing part when you can kind of travel around, and the plan was to travel around a lot when I started it. But unfortunately I haven't been traveling a lot, obviously because of COVID, but now Right. It's starting, so this year I have a lot of trips planned, so I'll be traveling everywhere and taking my clients with me, so yeah, it'll be exciting.
Love it. Back up and running. Amazing. Well, listen, I am ready to dive right in. I am so very excited to chat with you. I haven't really, everyone on my podcast knows that I come from the world of ballroom dancing, high intensity sports. I, have all these disciplines, and that's why I specialize in habits, building sustainable habits, and breaking cycles of perfection. Because when you are being judged all the time on your appearance and your movement and every, not hair being out of place, all that stuff, you develop lots of perfectionism qualities. And so I help people break those cycles and help live a balanced life. But I haven't really talked about how I want to give back to my industry and pull it back in so that I can help, especially the youth who are jumping into this industry at very, very young ages. Some of them start at the age of 3 and 4, but a lot of them, they're choosing not to go to college, and they're just doing dance full time at the age of maybe 18 to 21. And then they go pro and they start teaching, and they're kind of going in the machine, right? Every industry has a machine. We have our own machine. And those are the ones that are the most they're like sponges. They absorb everything, and they see the glitz and glamour and the sparkles and spray tans and all the fun things that we can do in this industry. And it is absolutely amazing. Everything that I have and everything I'm able to do is because of dance. It is literally my lifeline. But there's a flip side of the coin that nobody's really talking about, of how the industry guides us and how we kind of have to find our own way at some point in time. And I'm so excited that you're helping people do this on a mental health level. Yeah. So can we talk a little bit? Let's start with just kind of how you got into this, what kind of your story is, maybe, in a condensed version. And then, let's start with that.
Yeah, I'll make it very condensed because I guess. But I was kind of doing all of those things. So I was young, I competed, then I turned pro. Then when I finished with pro, then I opened up my own dance school. I had a dance school, I was teaching, all of those things. And then I just kind of felt like I always really liked to study, but I never had the chance that much when I was competing because, of course, everything was kind of focused on competing.
Right.
And then I started studying psychology of sport and exercise. And I studied that at a bachelor's and a master's in London. And then it was when I finished that, I've never really had a kind of particular plan to use it for anything in particular. I just kind of thought, oh, this is interesting to study, and maybe this can be helpful in my teaching dancing.
Sure.
So it wasn't with like a particular thing in mind. But then when I finished studying, actually, I moved to the Dominican Republic to get a different life.
Wow, that's awesome.
So I lived there for a year and I opened a dance school, and I had a dance school there. And then I moved back to Denmark about 3 years ago now. And I guess I was kind of just thinking, like, I hadn't really been using my degree. I wanted to, like, I've always been reading stuff about sports psychology, but never really like kind of doing anything with it as a job.
Uh-huh.
And then I thought, let me just start making some videos and just kind of to read up on things. And I started making these videos and putting them on YouTube, putting them on Instagram, and then people would start contacting me. And then I was like, okay, I can do a workshop here and there. Then I had a client here and there. And then it's just kind of grown from there to the point where now I'm like actually completely full-time. I also have kind of a side job where I'm a researcher in sports psychology, but I have a full-time job with workshops and clients alongside that.
That's amazing. I love that. What a great flow of your journey of how you kind of got to where you are. Mine, as my audience knows, was a lot bumpier than that. But
I guess it sounds very non-bumpy when I explain it. It was a little bit more bumpy than that.
Everybody has their life challenges. But I mean, I think for me, like, I didn't expect to end up being a life coach. Like, I think for a while, I thought I was going to be a professional dancer for the rest of my life, or I wanted to pursue acting, singing, all of that. My brother's an actor in LA. So we all came from like a very creative arts family. And our dad owned the dance studio and did kind of the whole thing in the industry. So we were a part of all of that, being able to express ourselves in a very exciting way, and very supportive from both of our parents. And then I got into a program in interior design in one of the top schools in the United States. And I was going to go to school for that. And then that was just a, quick, like, whoop, nope, this doesn't work for me, And so then I went in and started doing social media and event planning, which is actually what brought me back into the ballroom world once I took a break. And I started doing all of the social media for the competitions, because there was over 100 competitions in the United States. And I started putting myself in there. There was nobody doing that, and helping put these competitions on Instagram, Facebook, Google Business, YouTube, doing interviews, doing, all kinds of things at the competitions, to kind of put them on the map and diversify them. And then my dad bought one of the competitions, and I started doing things at an event planning level. And I was like, cool, I'm just going to be an event planner and have like a social media department. Like, that's great. And then I realized, like, whoa, like, I had so much work to do on myself personally and professionally. And that's when, I met my husband, and he was a whole turning chapter for me, because like, he saw my industry and was like, oh, cool, like, this is great, and I want to be a part of it, but also like, I have all these other things I want to do. And I was like, oh, I want to do other things, like, wait, hang on. So yeah, there was just a lot of questions I started asking myself. And that, I think, is when, and I wish I would have, like, that's the thing that I'm seeing now with the youth, is I'm like, I waited till I was like 28 to start asking myself a lot of these questions. And I wish I would have done it a lot sooner, as we all say, once we get this information. But seeing these 18, 19-year-olds, just fresh and excited about life and excited about dance. I was that way too. I was traveling all over the world. I mean, I had the life, man, and it's very glamorous. But what happens is that you get to a point where you're not exactly building anything sustainable, which is what you were saying before when you were talking about your clients, when we were chatting a little bit before the podcast. Can you talk more a little bit about the types of clients that you work with and like what problems they're facing and how you're helping them?
Yeah, so first of all, just kind of like clarify that I work with mental health as well, but it's not limited to mental health. So it's anything kind of sports psychology related, really. My clients are mostly dancers because that's how I advertise myself, of course, and that's my background, so it makes more sense. So mostly ballroom and Latin dancers. It's any level, really. Of course, I have a lot of people that are like high level amateurs and professionals, but it's also just kind of like pro-ams or people that are kind of starting out on the journey but feel like they need some help with it. Yeah. So it's really any level, and I would say any age, but I tend to work obviously kind of mostly adults, because children I do sometimes with workshops and stuff, but for individual sessions, it's a little bit more challenging, especially online. The things they come with is anything, really. And sometimes they come with one thing, and we also start working on other things, but it tends to be things like you mentioned, like with perfectionism, lack of confidence, feeling compared to other people, body image, how to deal with all these difficult thoughts we have, anxiety in terms of like performance anxiety, so competing, and then a lot of it as well, because of course in ballroom dancing we dance in a couple, and a lot of it is like communication issues between the partners as well. So it's quite varied, and I like that because I like all these different like different things. So every session is really different, even though of course some things kind of the way we deal with it can be similar sometimes, but I like the variety of it.
Absolutely. Do you ever discuss like the financial side of what we do? Because, you know, our industry, it's kind of its own little bubble. It has a lot of, you know, a lot of wealth circulating within it, but it's also not consistent income. And the people who have consistent income, I guess, you know, even then, you know, it can last 3 or 4 years with a really good student or something like that, or they have a competition or something like that, so they get annual income. But it's a lot of like building, you know, even studios here in the United States, we maybe have like, I mean, we have thousands upon thousands of studios, but we have maybe like 5 or 6 of them that are like $1 million studios, you know, and even $1 million, what's $1 million in a business? Do you know what I'm saying? So like, how do you discuss with them like the financial side of it, or do they ask that? And what are your recommendations maybe for that, of like having some sort of side business? Like we just talked about the fact that we both built a business online that supplement to anything else that we can do, and we can build multiple streams of that.
It's not something that people often ask me about. I have to be honest with that, but like sometimes, especially with the clients that I work with more long term, of course, especially when it's like financial struggles that are affecting the way the mental health or the kind of mindset in general, of course we have to talk about it.
Sure.
I tend not to come with kind of recommendations on like how they should build a business. I mean, of course I've built a few businesses myself, so in that way I can give them some advice, but I feel like that's maybe not my role that they're coming to me with.
Gotcha.
But there are definitely some people that are thinking more in the future, but otherwise I think most of the dancers are thinking more like the kind of here and now, like, and most of them are teaching, whether it's I think it's pretty stable, you know, like obviously with COVID it's been quite challenging, but
I mean, that was the biggest thing. I had so many of my colleagues call me and friends like, what are you and your husband doing now that there's no studios and there's no this and no events? And I was like, well, we've kind of been building other stuff on the back end that doesn't rely on the ballroom dance industry, because it's the first thing to go. And we didn't know a pandemic was coming, obviously, but we were already building things outside of it because we saw that it was just very volatile, you know, and not knowing when things could happen and how big certain events are going to be affects our income. And we had to have something else in the pipeline.
I think you need a very specific type of personality to be able to deal with this kind of constant stress of not having a 9 to 5 type of job.
Right.
But I guess it's similar to being like an entrepreneur or business owner. Like you need that type of different mindset for it. A lot of the dancers have their teaching, they're doing shows, they're doing some of them other little businesses on the side, selling different things that are, or social media and stuff like that. So I think they're quite good at it. Of course, they're not $1 million businesses, but I think most of them are just, their concern at the moment is just building a business that can kind of sustain themselves.
Right.
I don't know what their plans are, like kind of long term with the businesses, but I guess that will come also when they finish dancing. I think it's really important to be balanced, but at the same time, I also think it's important to know what your focus is and what is important. And if you're really focusing on being a professional, high-level dancer, it's probably not realistic to think that you're going to be running 3 businesses on the side of that. So although I think they should have some balance in their life, I also think you have to be realistic with what is like the goal right now. So, okay, right now, maybe we're focusing on dancing, then we have a plan long term where we're going to do different things.
Sure. Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's great. So also there's another part of this, when it comes to a lot of the pros in our industry end up being together because they spend so much time together. So they're usually married to their partners. And eventually they get to a point where they want kids, and that's very difficult because you can't compete and be pregnant, and all of that going on. And so we're seeing, I don't know if you've been seeing some of these trends, but like, the generation that has already retired, that is in their 40s and 50s right now, a lot of them don't have children because it was just a time where, at least the ones I know, there was a time, or they're having children very much later. It was a time where a lot of them were just, that's all they focused on was competing. And then they got to a point where they were then maintaining the hustle after the retirement to continue being in the business. And then it just, kids just was never in the pipeline, or maybe the relationships didn't work out after they retired. They didn't have anything in common anymore. And now all of a sudden, that kind of thing. But I'm seeing a lot of like my friends now that are in their 20s and 30s, specifically the 30s, because in the 20s, they're still competing heavily, but that have kind of reached a peak of their, they kind of know at this point, like, okay, I made it to the top, or I made it to the top 5, or I did what I wanted to do. I made an impact. And now they're like, cool, I'm going to, they want to have kids. So I have some of my friends who are on their, first, second kids even. And a lot of them are like, oh, well, maybe we'll go back to competing. Maybe we won't. It just depends. They're kind of like creating more of this life balance on their own, despite their coach's guidance or what other people would do in the past. Have you come across some of those kind of like forks in the road when it comes to building a family as a professional dancer?
Well, I think generally people, at least in the past, have waited until they stop dancing. And then, of course, that's usually when they're kind of mid-30s or something like that. And then they have children then. So we see a lot of people that have children and are married, but they just do it slightly later.
Right.
But then I think at the moment now, I see even, recently watching UK Open, you see in the final, there are people that like literally have 1 or 2 children and still coming back and still making the final and still.
Wow.
So I saw that both in Latin and in ballroom. So it's not that uncommon anymore, and it definitely seems to be possible. So of course, I would imagine it puts quite a lot of strain on your kind of family life when you're competing and traveling. Right. But of course, there are different ways of doing everything. So it's about finding a way to do it and a balance. I don't know these people like personally, but it seems to be possible.
Yeah. Oh no, definitely. I see it as well. Here, more so here in the United States, a lot of the people I know are, they use the pandemic also as an opportunity to say, yeah, you know what, let's just have a kid, we can't dance, let's do the kid thing. So that
probably
helps a lot.
Never knew how long it was going to last. So I think if people had known, they would have been like, okay, let's get this out of the way now. We kind of constantly thought, okay, in 1 month this will be over, no, next month will be over.
Exactly. Yeah. So so let's talk a little bit about the balance of things. I think we're putting a lot of focus on our industry, but life balance is life balance. It applies to every person in every aspect, every job, career, of creating, emphasis on your professional life and emphasis on your personal life. But the lines get really blurry in our industry, right? Because we tend to, like I said, date and sometimes marry our dance partners, and we travel together, we work together, we dance together, we do everything together, and then your personal life becomes your work life, and a lot of your students tend to, we go out to dinners, we do fun things, like the lines get very blurry. How do you encourage your clients to maintain a healthy balance between the two and make sure that it doesn't all become one?
I think it really depends on the person. So I would never kind of have a set kind of way to do things, because I think some people, they work really well with this kind of mixed, blurred lines. Like I know for myself, I'm quite okay with that. Like I don't really have any lines between work and my personal life, because it's kind of so intertwined that it's kind of becomes one. But I think if some people feel that that's not working for them, then of course you need to set some boundaries. But I think like in anything, in dancing and in life, like you kind of feel what feels right for me, what doesn't feel right for me, how do I set boundaries, how do I communicate those to people around me, and that's the most important thing, that it's working for you. And then whether people think that's okay or not okay, or the normal thing or the not normal thing to do, I think that doesn't matter. I think it's a balance, and it's tricky, because on one side, to be an athlete at a very high level, you need to put in a kind of very high amount of work, and probably do more than normal people would. But at the same time, of course, you need some kind of balance. And I think especially like for your identity, when you retire, if you feel like your whole identity is being a dancer and there's nothing else in your life.
Exactly.
And also I think like with my clients, what I see is that I have a lot of clients that dancing is the only thing in their life. And of course, that's amazing sometimes when things are going well. When things are not going well, all of a sudden, like, dancing is not going well and there's nothing else to fall back on. There's nothing else to create that balance that you need in your life to kind of be a full person. And then I think with the teachers, I think that's what I'm struggling with the most, is there's this kind of idea that the more you practice, the better. The harder you work, the better. If you work 12 hours a day in the studio, even better. And it's like, if your feet are bleeding, great, continue, like if you're injured and you're still coming in, fantastic. And of course, like, dedication is really good, but it's also sometimes about like working in a way that's smart and that's sustainable, because going in 12 hours every day, not having a life and killing yourself is just not sustainable long term. And for me, what I want my clients, of course, to win and to be successful in whatever that means to them. Usually it means winning, but I also want them to not just win one competition, but to continue have a long career where they can win and they can have a life where they're happy living it as well.
Definitely. Yeah, no, I mean, I think already being an artist and a professional dancer is already out of the norm for society in general. So we kind of break a lot of societal rules, which is what I love about it. Because I think that it allows, for what it did for me, is it allowed me to be free and to dream and to ask for what I wanted and know that there was more than one way to live a good quality of life. And I think when you grow up with those, belief systems that are not limiting to you, then possibilities are endless.
Yeah. And I think that is my kind of, I guess, philosophy, is that there is no right way to do anything. There is no right way to live. There's no right way to, like, it just depends on the person. Like, so I would always, with my clients, go very much into like values and what is important for you. And my goal for myself and for my clients is always to kind of live a life that's based on their values. So I might have some values and I'm trying to live my life according to those. and my clients might have different values, and they should live their life according to those. And then that might look really different to me and to them, but that's okay, as long as we're, then I think if the gap is too big between what your values are and the life that you're living, that's when you start becoming really unhappy. So if you can somehow close that gap as much as possible, that would be the goal. The way to do that for me is to first of all be aware of what your values are, and then seeing kind of, okay, where in my life am I not really living those values, and then making changes, of course.
Yeah. I mean, we talk about the same thing and with my clients and with in our academy, that we call them core values. And so you focus on the core values, and whatever is not working towards those core values, pitch it, get rid of it, and look at what your life looks like and what you want your life to look like. And like you said, I like how you said close the gap. I've never thought of it that way. That's very, very good. So what do you see for the future of our sport? It's evolving all the time. It's becoming more and more popular because of Dancing with the Stars. And, now Derek Huff is putting a lot of things on the map. He's the first ever ballroom dancer to have his own show in Las Vegas, his residency, which is amazing. He did it last year and he just got renewed again to do it this year. And it is a full ballroom show. I mean, it's incredible. And anything that's ever been, at least in Vegas, has always been under the franchise of Dancing with the Stars, or there's been ballroom dancers in other shows, but it wasn't a ballroom show. We have obviously, So You Think You Can Dance with Mary Murphy, and we've got all of that going on. So, Shirley Ballas is in the UK doing all of those wonderful things over there. And where do you see, now that it's becoming more known, that people understand that this industry exists, and how we can all kind of create this wonderful joy with it? What do you see for the future of our industry?
Well, I always think that the increased popularity of dancing is great, because of course that creates more work, it creates more competitors, it creates more talent. So in that way it's great. I don't know if it's necessarily such a new thing. Maybe some parts of the world it is, like Dancing with the Stars, or Strictly Come Dancing as it's called in England. It's a very old show.
We had Dancing with the Stars came from Strictly. So Strictly was the first one, which is great. But we're on season 30 now. So I think if you did 2 seasons a year, and skipped a few years, I think that we've had it going for about 15, 17 years.
Yeah. But I think in England, it started like many years ago. And I know when I talk to my parents that are not in dancing at all, they remember that when they were young, there was like a lot of ballroom dancing was really popular, and then it kind of decreased a little bit in popularity. Now it seems to be coming back. So I guess it's just in waves that it goes like that. But I think popularity is always good.
Yes.
Because it creates more opportunities for the dancers, because I think that there's a lot of things in our sport that are not really at the same level as other sports. And of course, it's kind of a sport and art combined, so that also makes it tricky.
Yes.
But I work with some research within football. And when you look at how that is organized compared to the dance world, and the kind of money, of course, that's in it as well, you can't compare. And it just gives different opportunities. So I would hope that in dancing that we would get things, it would become more and more organized. There would be more and more kind of guidelines, especially regarding kind of mindset, mental health, those type of things, because there's some amazing trainers out there and teachers, but there's also some that really, I think most of them want to do well and they mean well, but sometimes they do things that doesn't have a good impact on the dancers. And it might be that they're trying their best and they're doing it out of good intention, but it's kind of lack of education not within dancing, but within kind of the mental health and how it's really affecting dancers, and how you can maybe also sometimes lack of understanding of teaching. So I would hope that there would be more kind of education and more maybe guidelines within that. I'm part of this group now with it's called International Dancing Minds, where we're trying to a group of mental health professionals together, and we're trying to create guidelines for the whole industry, because there just doesn't seem to be much in ballroom dancing.
Right.
And also, if someone has any questions, or if anyone kind of doesn't know how to manage something, there's nowhere to turn. So even if the teachers kind of have a girl, for example, where they think, okay, this girl might have an eating disorder, or she might have some problems going on, where do you turn? Like, they don't know how to handle it. They don't know how to approach things in a good way.
Yeah.
And we're trying to kind of be that place where they can go and they can get help, and we will try and create some guidelines for them as well. It's still quite new, but that's kind of the hope for it. So I hope that, I think it's developing in the area, like sports psychology in general is developing a lot at the moment. But I think in dancing it's developing as well. When I started a few years ago, like no one knew what it was I was doing, and they were kind of like, why do I need this? What is it?
Right. That's the thing, is that I've come across that a lot too, is that a lot of them just think I have my, coach, I have my parents, I've got, the whole trifecta, I've got the competitions, I'm winning, I've got my great partner. What else do I need? And you don't realize that once you slow down and get out of that kind of like survival mode, traveling, jet lag, all the things all the time, that there's so much that comes up because we're human, and I think a huge example of that was Simone Biles in the last Olympics. It's, I compare that high level intensity sports to that. And for her to go to the Olympics and then, explain to people that she had, she called it the twisties, where she was going to injure herself if she competed. So she had to pull out of a lot of events. A lot of people didn't understand that. Of course, a lot of people are not in high intensity sports, so they don't understand the decision behind why she, did all the aspects as to why she made that decision. But once we started getting into it, and obviously other sports professionals understood, and for someone of that caliber and so much in the public eye to make the decision to choose herself over her sport, over her country, over, how many times do you hear people, professional dancers, oh yeah, I'm injured, or my foot hurts, or I have this, or I just got back, I feel sick today, but I'm going to dance. Like, no big deal. Like, we push ourselves, and I think we don't give ourselves as much grace and rest as we need. I think some of us don't need it as much as others, but I also think it's necessary, like you said, to have that balance. For me, when I saw that happen with Simone Biles, I did an entire bonus episode on my podcast about it, because I wasn't even in season in my podcast. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is so powerful. She just gave mental health a platform within the high intensity sports industry. Did that kind of like have an impact on you as well? Or what did you feel?
Well, it didn't have an impact on me, like personally, except for like in the terms of work, but I thought it was just really interesting how she actually came out and talked about it. And I think that is so important.
Yes.
And I think it made the whole kind of sport world talk about mental health, which is really good. I didn't see that at all translating into ballroom dancing, unfortunately.
Right.
And I think that's the problem, that I don't think that it's just something you realize once you finish dancing. I think that most dancers really understand that there's something that is not working for them. Like, most of them would say, we don't have confidence, like my body image is horrible, I have all this negative self-talk, I'm nervous, all of these things. I just think they don't know that this is something that you actually need skills to help you cope with.
Right.
And a lot of the teachers think that they can help with it because they have experience, and of course they do have experience, but experience doesn't teach you to help someone necessarily, because experience is your experience and every person is different. So you can't rely on your experience to help someone else who's a different person.
Right.
So I think that there just has to be more kind of understanding, okay, there are people there that can help you. You need to reach out to them. You need to actually spend, because also some people then think, oh yeah, it would be great, but then they don't want to spend the money on it, or they don't want to spend the time or the energy on it. And I think even the ones that do, there's a lot of stigma around it. So I work with a lot of high level dancers that are open about it, but I also work with probably twice as many that are not. And no one knows that I'm working with them except for me and them. I won't, say hi to them in a competition. I won't walk up to them. Their teachers don't know, because they just prefer it like that. And of course, I completely respect that. But I just think it's a shame that it's not the same as going to lessons with a teacher and be like, I'm going for a lesson. I want to improve my mindset.
Right. We need to normalize mental health being a thing that everybody should have. In our coaching industry, in the life coaching space, we say, if your coach doesn't have a coach, you need a new coach. Because everybody should have a coach, a therapist, some sort of guidance, someone that they can go to help them, just with normal human things. And I think when you're in this space and you're constantly talking about this all the time, it's like, well, yeah, duh. And you start talking to other people and it's like, yeah, it makes total sense. And then you start talking to the mass of people that don't understand the positive effects of having guidance in your mental health. And they start getting into all of the limiting beliefs of society of like, oh, I'm broken. I'm sick, right? Or I'm weak because I need someone to help me, get my mindset right. And a big part of high competitive sports is mindset. So they think that my mindset's already like should be strong. Why do I need help with this? And it's like, there's a lot of anxiety and, like you said, body image and confidence issues and, financial struggles, all of these things that we deal with as humans, but especially as ballroom dancers, that nobody is helping with. And it needs to be normalized that we seek that guidance.
But I think also it's because that we are kind of taught to give off this persona of being super confident, super strong-minded, and we just practice and we have no feelings kind of thing.
Right.
And when we're giving off that persona, like most of the people that come to me will be like, oh, I know that I have this problem. I know that no one else feels like that. And I'm like, I've literally talked to 10 people today that feels the same. And tomorrow I'll talk to 10 others. So it's like, and even the ones that are really, high level, it's the same. Like I sometimes have lower level dancers and they will come to me and they'll kind of be, oh, this dancer is like my big idol. They're so confident. And I'm like thinking in my head, obviously not saying it, like I literally had a session with that person yesterday. They're not
as confident as you think they are.
But no one talks about it. And I think that's a shame. I think people need to start talking about it more. And like you said, like it has nothing to do with that you're ill or that you're sick or there's something wrong with you. And you can't help yourself. Like, even if you have all the knowledge, you can't help yourself. Like I can't help myself. Of course, it helps having the knowledge, but I have a psychologist myself that I go to my problems with, because like the metaphor that I really like, that I use always with my clients. So if my clients are listening, sorry, because you probably heard it before, but is that for me, it's like we're on two different mountains. Like I'm on my mountain, like kind of climbing up, and you're on your mountain climbing. And I can kind of see things from my perspective that you're not seeing. So I can kind of be like, wait, you're going in the wrong direction, go to the side. And they, and it's not necessarily that I'm higher up or that I'm having my own struggles here, but I'm seeing things from a different perspective. Right. I can see your blind angles that you can't see yourself. And it's impossible to see your own blind angles because that's why they're blind.
Right. That's it. Yeah. You've got the glasses on, you're biased. But I like to say that when I found the life coaching space, going through all of, like you said, we have to be strong, we have to be perfect, we have to, there's so much pressure we put on ourselves and the industry puts on us, that when I found the life coaching space, I was so excited that I could be a work in progress and still be an expert in my field and help people change their lives. And being the work in progress, having a podcast called The Recovering Perfectionist and being vulnerable and still being an expert for my clients and getting paid for my expertise was something that just blew my mind. And it actually resonated with my clients more, that they knew that I was going through what they were going through as well. And not on the same level, obviously. Like you said, I like the mountain aspect as well, because we've climbed the mountains they're climbing currently, right? We've got strategies and tools for them. Of course, it doesn't mean that we're going to be perfect. We're always going to kind of maybe fall back into some bad habits, but the idea is we know now how to fix them so we can help them. And we're dealing with our own new mountains to climb, right? And so again, we are constantly a work in progress, and we have days that aren't great, and we have days that are full of anxiety, and we have days where we don't have confidence. But that doesn't mean that I can't be a good coach and help somebody else with their problems. You know, and in ballroom dancing, if I walked into to teach someone and said, oh, well, I'm not, you know, I'll help you with this, but I don't quite know, you know, how to do, you know, an alamana the way that, you know, or I don't quite know how to do this particular step, back spot, whatever that I know. I mean, people will be like, why am I paying you? Like, why am I here? So there's this level of, you can't not know what you're teaching, which I get it because it's a sport, but with mental health, it's almost like relating to each other's struggles is what helps you be a better coach.
Yeah.
Right.
No, I agree. And I think even in dancing, I guess I would prefer if some teachers had been more honest and be like, you know, there's some things I don't know, let me check it for you. And I've had some teachers that were like that, and that made me respect them more, to be honest. But I think you're right. And I think when I first started out, I was more kind of like, okay, I have to kind of be perfect and tell them the perfect advice and not show my own struggles. Now, of course, it's not about me, so I don't usually share my own, but of course, we all have our own things that we're working on. And I try to, especially in the sessions as well, I want to model that as well. Like, there might be times where I've forgotten what we talked about last time because I forgot to write it down, and I'll just say it. I won't like sit there and pretend like I remember what you said if I don't, you know? So I think we have to model that. I think for me, at least, like personally, it has come with education and knowing that I know what I'm talking about, like taking a bachelor and a master's and now doing research. I'm starting my PhD soon. And, you know, it's doing all of that. I'm quite confident that I have the knowledge. So I don't feel like I have to kind of justify it. And always these kind of certificate is always good when people are kind of thinking, oh, do you actually know? Then I'm like, well, here are my certificates kind of thing. Right. I guess that sometimes gives them a bit of extra belief that you know that it's not just based on my experience. But of course, I also been through it myself. Like I was a dancer and I know that whole world and and for sure I didn't know
what I know now
when I was dancing, because some people are like, if you knew all these things, like why didn't you win? And I was like, yeah, because I learned after. That's right.
It came after.
God, people, when they're talking about arguing with their partner, I was like, oh, well, been there, done that.
Learn the hard way. So when you work with a lot of these, like, especially these high Latin dancers, for those who don't know, you know, in our industry, we have 4 different styles. And the Latin dancers are really like the ones that are like, it's very, very competitive. It's very intense. Latin and standard is the international styles. Or ballroom, as they say over in the UK. But we, when you work with a lot of these Latin dancers, you know, on mental health and helping them to understand how to feel their feelings and really be, like you said, awareness. That's what I always say, awareness and intention. These are the 2 things we need in life. And so when you're aware and you make intentional choices to choose you sometimes over your sport, or you are, you know, understanding how to have better body image and better confidence and things like that. Do you ever find, because I've had this with my personal growth development journey, do you ever find that now maybe they're becoming a little bit softer and they don't have that hunger or that attack that they used to have? Because for me, I felt like I wasn't able to handle living in that survival mode anymore. So I wasn't as like, I would go to a few events and all of a sudden I would like start having headaches or be more tired, or I would be just more aware of what I was feeling because I was pushing all those feelings down before. And now I was letting them come to the surface and be present. I was learning how to deal with them, but it would not allow me to deal with the industry and the scheduling and all of that stuff the same way that I used to. When I was just go and nothing else mattered and I was laser focused. And does that make sense?
No, it does make sense. It's been a concern of mine previously, but I think now I've kind of found a way where that doesn't become a thing. I think it's because I'm so focused on like kind of the values, and if your value is that you dancing, you want to be a good dancer and you want to win and all these things, and you know why you're doing that, I think that will guide your choices. And I think sometimes the whole idea of being a perfectionist, even if it kind of can drive you, so there can be some positive things about that.
Oh, definitely.
Then it also can lead you to procrastination. It can lead you to having a lot of thoughts that are not helpful. It can lead you to have a lot of behaviors that are not helpful, that are coming in because of that.
Right.
So I think you get rid of those, then actually you're making better choices. So it might be that you're not in the studio for 12 hours, but instead of being in the studio for 12 hours, you're in there for 6 hours and you're really getting something out of it, and you end up having better results. Right. So I think that
quality over quantity, essentially.
Yeah, I think so. And I think sometimes like the better life and the happier and all these things that the dancers are becoming, I think that helps their dancing, and it just makes them better dancers. And dancing, because it's not just a sport, but it is an art, you must be in contact with your emotions. So that whole contact as well, I think, makes them better and makes them more artistic. And at least in my experience, I think a lot of dancers come in with that fear, and they're kind of like, yeah, but if I'm not a perfectionist, then I'm going to, be soft and just stay at home watching TV.
Right. Well, that's an extreme, but I've heard from a lot of former champions, that they're like, yeah, if you don't have that, that kill or be killed kind of mentality, like you're not going to be a champion. Like you just like nothing else matters except that. And then when I hear that from some of the, people in their 40s and 50s that have been through this industry in that time and not had that life balance, they became champions. Yes. But my question is, how can we be better? And how can we create champions that also have life balance? Or does life balance make you soft and make you not a champion because you're actually like being aware and saying no sometimes and choosing yourself? And I don't know. I think there's a huge transition going on right now. I don't actually know the right answer, but I'm hoping that in the future that we can still become champions and create some sort of a life balance, even if you're in this high intensity sport for a short period of time. We know that that's not a sustainable lifestyle, but you do it for a short amount of time, like people in the Olympics. And then you understand that like, okay, now I'm going to retire, have my family, do all of that, instead of some of them who just go and never retire, never get their family, never do what they want to do because everything is their sport. I don't know. There's a lot of aspects to it. Do you see where I'm getting?
Yeah, it's a really interesting topic. And I guess, there's a lot of ways to kind of view it, but I think I'm quite hard on my, on the people I work with. And I think they should do more than everyone else. I think if they want to win, so if that is what is important to them, and not just because someone said they should, but because it's really what they feel inside, and that is their passion, and that is their values, and that is their reason, all those things, well, they should probably push themselves more than other people. They should probably go to practice on a Friday night sometimes. But I just think if you're really aware of what is important to you, it's not going to feel like a sacrifice.
Sure.
I know for myself, when I was dancing, like I remember when I was in school in particular, a lot of people were like, oh, but don't you feel bad like not going out on a Saturday night with your friends? And I was like, no, because I like to dance and I'm at the studio where I like to be. So no. But of course, not everyone feels like that. So it might be that some people are pushing themselves, but actually this is not the right place for them. So maybe they should dance recreational, maybe they should just dance, maybe compete, but not at that level. Or, I think it's all about finding what is right for them. And my goal is never to make anyone a champion who doesn't want to be a champion. Like, if this is what you want, of course, we can work on that and we can explore why that's important to you. But there's a lot of people that maybe realize, you know what, maybe this is not for me. Maybe I want to do something else because I want to do other things. And that's great as well. There's no right way to live, for me at least. So I don't think, but I think that people really, there are those people that really just want it and they want to go. And, but still they need balance. But balance might look different than to someone normal, let's say,
For sure.
Because it is a very specific lifestyle to be an athlete at any sport. And you have to probably do things that other people wouldn't do. And that's kind of part of it. If you want to win, of course, you can dance and compete at all levels, like, and maybe this is not the case for like pro-am or people at lower levels or recreational dancing. But if you're like in the final in the world, it will probably be a massive part of your life, and you would have to expect it to be. Then you have to kind of see, well, is that what I want to do with my life? And maybe it is for a certain amount of time. And but also,
I think I'm sorry to cut you. I feel like there needs to be what I'm seeing myself guide, especially the youth, but like the rising star professionals, but also like there just needs to be an exit strategy. Because I think that that's what I've seen the most in, the former professionals there was never an exit strategy. There was no internet to be able to provide online businesses or do other things or family life or anything. It was just like, this is my life. And like you said, they're very present, which I think is a very good thing about dance, is that a lot of people are not present in their life. So dance allows you to be very present and you think of the here and now, but there needs to be a balance of thinking about the future as well. And I think that a lot of the former pros, they were just constantly just moving, and every day, every week, every month would reveal itself every year. And then there was never this life plan or exit strategy of like, when I'm done with this is what I want to do. Or like you went to school, you got your master's, there was other plans happening. So there were things around you being built. So it wasn't just the house with no greenery. You know what I mean?
Yeah, like I obviously I did all those things, but I have to admit that was not like when I was 15 and I wanted to be a professional dancer. I was not thinking, okay, now after this, I'm going to create this. It all kind of happened in the here now. So it was kind of like, okay, right now I want to study. Let me go and study. Right now I want to build a business. I build a business. So I don't think I had kind of like a long-term goal of what I wanted to do. I think I'm like, I guess like a lot of dancers in that way, I'm very passionate in anything I do, even now when I'm not dancing. And I follow my passions all the time. So right now I'm really passionate about doing sports psychology research. So I'm putting a lot of time and effort into that. And I don't know if I kind of have, of course you always have some ideas, but I try to talk to my clients about their long-term goal and what they want to be doing. And and it's good to have an idea about it, but at the same time it can also change. So a lot of them are really
absolutely. But it needs to be, I think we need to be asking ourselves more questions. And just like you said, just mental health, we need to always be being more aware. Am I still doing what I love? Especially kids. Am I doing this because I love it, or am I doing it because my parents love it for me? Right. So everyone needs to be asking themselves these questions. And as coaches and as professionals in this industry, we need to be asking people, asking the dancers and encouraging them to seek more and more just about themselves. What do you want? Do you still want this? Do a check-in with yourself. How are you feeling? Right. And I think that is not something that we've seen in the past. It was just go, 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 go. You win, you keep winning. You don't win, you go back to the studio, you optimize, you win, like it was just kind of a cycle. And I think by asking more questions and being more self-aware, we're going to start to really normalize and create this healthy balance that you're discussing.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think questions are always good to ask. And I think for me, I think the pandemic has kind of given the opportunity to stop. I've done a bit of collected data. I have written up some of it as well. I haven't published it yet, so it's still kind of unpublished research that I'm talking about. But I've done some research on how ballroom dancers were coping during the pandemic and what kind of strategies they used and what changes it made to their lives. And I think for most of them, what they found was that suddenly it gave them time to think, what do I really want to do with my life? And for some people, it meant stopping dancing and studying, because they thought, you know what, I don't want to be in an industry where it's not secure.
That's right.
And then they went into a more secure industry and they feel better for it. And other people were like, wait, dancing is the only thing I want to do. And they've gone more in that direction and quit their jobs. And so it's just, I think for everyone, it provided more clarity. And I think asking questions, that is all it's doing, is always giving you more clarity.
Right.
And
the pandemic forced us to ask questions, but we need to be doing that regularly, voluntarily,
yes,
just to keep ourselves in check. I think everyone needs to be doing that, but specifically in our industry too.
Sometimes you're scared what the answer will be.
Right. It is. It's very scary. I mean, anytime you ask yourself a question like that, as we know in mental health, like it's uncomfortable, it's scary, but you're not going to get to where you want to be or be healthier or fix a problem, a pain point with the tools that you've created, that you already have, because the tools that you have and the person that you are is what got you to where you are right now. And you cannot get to where you want to be with those same tools. You need new ones, So it's just about building more layers of strategies and sustainable habits, all the things, So for someone who's starting this journey, right? Whether it be, obviously this applies to anyone that would want to work with both of us, but specifically ballroom dancers who are realizing that this is now becoming a, very important factor in our industry. What would you say to them if they are just hearing this for the first time and going, wow, I do feel like I need something like this, or I do feel like something's just not clicking, or something is bothering me, or whatever. What's the first step that you would tell them to do?
Well, I think contact one of us. So yeah, like contact me or you or anyone who kind of works. I also always feel that I'm not the only option in this. There are other people that any sports psychology or therapist, but of course sometimes can be helpful that someone has lived the same experience and is still in the dance industry. But I think reaching out for help is the first step, and then exploring it together, and then kind of taking it from there. Like my work that I do is really solution based and really skill based. So I will almost give you like a toolbox, and we'll fill it with tools, and then when you have all things that are coming up, you can take the tools out and use them. So, and like I will literally give my clients like homework to do. They will have to do exercises, they'll have to fill in stuff, so you have to be prepared to do some work on it. But I think the work is always worth it, both in your dancing but in your life in general.
Totally agree. Absolutely agree. Thank you so much for being here. If anyone wants to get in contact with Christina, all of her links are in the show notes. Where's the best place for them to contact you, just so we know?
I'm most active on Instagram.
Okay, great.
So just send me a DM and I'll definitely see it. But also on my website, there's my email, and I'll also find you if you respond write me a message on Facebook. But I'm quite big on social media, because I feel like that's the best place to reach the dancers. So I check that regularly.
Awesome. Yeah. So all those links are in the show notes if you want to get a hold of Christina. And I hope that this resonated with you. I know that we specifically talked about an industry that is, it's a tiny bubble to some people, but it's a giant, bubble for us. But I think it's something, that when I started this podcast, the reason I'm a recovering perfectionist is because of this industry. But I also love what you said about perfectionism being something that gave us the drive and motivation to be where we are today. And I wouldn't take that away from it. There's good perfectionism and unhealthy perfectionism. And I always said, that this is confessions of a ballroom dancer. Like, this is kind of where we're at. And so we go off on lots of different topics. We're on, we've got 4 seasons and about 42 episodes under our belt here. But we are, the core of this show started from, the disciplines of this industry that have taught me so much about who I am, but also, how I've unlearned a lot of things that just didn't work for me in my regular life and creating that life balance. So I love having this conversation. And I think that it's so amazing to have someone else in the industry that is actually working towards solutions for ballroom dancers that can help us in the future really, like you said, have guidelines and have, strategies and ways to help ourselves and people we can go to when we have these problems.
Amazing. Yeah. And thank you for doing this podcast. I think for me, the most important thing is just people talking about it, because for many years it's just not been something that's been talked about. So
absolutely,
talk about mental health, talk about mindset, talk about sports psychology, the more the better.
That's it. We have to start the conversation.
Yes, exactly.
Thank you so much for listening to the Recovering Perfectionist Podcast. I'm Christine, and if this episode resonated with you or spoke to you in any way, please feel free to share. I absolutely love hearing from you guys and your thoughts about the topics based on your experiences. And also, if there's anything you want me to talk about, just screenshot this episode and share it on social media with your comments. Your feedback really helps me to curate episodes that best serve you. If you have time, I would greatly appreciate if you could leave a review wherever you're listening to this episode, whether on Apple or Spotify or any other platform. I'm wishing you a blessed week ahead, and remember, perfection doesn't exist. Take messy action. Healthy habits keep us balanced, and you are enough.